Is Serbia shifting its position on the war in Ukraine? Since the start of the conflict, Belgrade has been accused of an excessively pro-Russian stance. While Serbian officials insist their country isn't taking sides, Belgrade's failure to impose sanctions on Moscow and its close ties to the Kremlin have been widely condemned. However, there are signs that this might be changing. In July 2026, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić visited Kyiv for the first time since the start of the war, meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky. So, what exactly lies behind this move? While wars often force countries to pick a side, some states deliberately try to stand apart from the conflict. Sometimes this reflects a long-standing policy of neutrality. Alternatively, it could stem from deep domestic divisions or a belief that the conflict doesn't directly concern them. But it can also be the result of a need to preserve good relations with both sides. However, maintaining such a balance is rarely easy. Lean too far towards one side and relations with the other may suffer, with potentially profound consequences. Yet, move too far away from a long-standing partner and a country risks losing vital support. This is the challenge Serbia now faces. For almost 2 decades, Belgrade has pursued a delicate balancing act between Russia and the European Union. Under President Aleksandar Vučić, it sought to keep Serbia on the path towards EU membership while maintaining close political and strategic ties with Moscow. However, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has placed that strategy under unprecedented strain. While many observers have argued that Serbia has tilted far too far towards the Kremlin, Vučić's recent visit to Kyiv has prompted a debate over whether Belgrade is beginning to shift its position or simply trying to recalibrate as the tide of the war appears to be changing. To understand the nature of the problem that Serbia now faces, we need to take a look at its relationship with Russia on the one hand and the European Union on the other. Serbia's ties to Moscow go back well over a century and have long been reinforced by close cultural affinities, including Orthodox Christianity and Slavic heritage. However, in recent years, the close relationship has been primarily driven by Moscow's position on Kosovo, which unilaterally declared independence from Serbia in 2008. While most of the West, including 22 of the 27 members of the European Union, have recognised Kosovo, Russia has stood firmly behind Serbia as it's waged a political, legal and diplomatic battle to retain control of what it still regards as its southern province. Most importantly, Moscow's veto in the UN Security Council has prevented Kosovo from joining the United Nations, a move that many believe would effectively mark a final defeat for Serbia on the issue. But balanced against Russia's support on Kosovo, the European Union has emerged as Serbia's most important long-term strategic partner. Belgrade remains formally committed to joining the EU, with accession negotiations continuing despite repeated delays and setbacks. Meanwhile, Serbia's economic relationship with Europe is critical. The EU is by far Serbia's largest single trading partner, accounting for the majority of its exports and imports, while European companies are among the country's biggest investors and employers. As a result, Serbia's future prosperity is closely tied to its relationship with the EU, even though many members have recognised Kosovo and have made it clear that eventual accession will require Belgrade to normalise its relationship with Pristina. While this gave Belgrade strong reasons to maintain good relations with both Brussels and Moscow, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine placed Serbia under unprecedented pressure. As the rest of Europe rallied behind Kyiv, Belgrade decided not to openly take sides. Although it essentially followed a policy of neutrality, Serbia soon faced widespread criticism for appearing to lean too far towards Moscow. As well as refusing to join EU sanctions on Russia, it kept air links to the country open and continued to receive Russian gas on favourable terms. On top of this, Serbian officials continued to meet their Russian counterparts, and President Vučić was strongly criticised for appearing alongside Vladimir Putin at Moscow's annual Victory Day parade. But behind the scenes, the picture wasn't quite as straightforward as it seemed. Despite claims that Belgrade had aligned itself with the Kremlin, it didn't in fact follow Russia's line. For instance, it reaffirmed Ukraine's territorial integrity in UN votes and avoided recognising Russia's territorial annexations. More crucially, evidence emerged that it had quietly provided indirect assistance to Kyiv. Although neither government has officially confirmed it, Serbian-made ammunition was reported to have reached Ukraine via European intermediaries. Taken all together, these moves paint an interesting picture. They suggest that while on the surface Serbia was determined to preserve its relationship with Russia, it was careful not to alienate the West. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please do give it a like and perhaps subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Many thanks, and now back to the video. And it's against this backdrop that Vučić travelled to Kyiv on the 15th of July for the Southeast Europe-Ukraine Summit, his first visit to the Ukrainian capital since the invasion. Meeting with President Zelensky, he reaffirmed Serbia's support for Ukraine's sovereignty and invited the Ukrainian leader to visit the Serbian capital, Belgrade. While the Kremlin conspicuously played down the visit, many nevertheless read it as an important shift in Serbia's position. This was seemingly confirmed just days later when the Serbian president appeared to signal a more independent course over the conflict. In an interview with an Austrian newspaper, he insisted that Serbia had no reason to avoid cooperating with Ukraine simply because another country objected, a remark widely interpreted as being directed at Moscow. So, what exactly is going on? On the one hand, there are good reasons to see this as a genuine, if gradual, tilt away from Russia. Alongside credible claims of arms supplies to Ukraine, the Kyiv visit follows an earlier appearance at a similar summit in Odessa in 2025. This suggests a pattern rather than a one-off gesture. More to the point, there are strong political reasons for such a change. The tide of the war in Ukraine appears to be turning. Russia now looks weaker than ever. Sensing this, a shift would play well with an EU that's increasingly turning back towards enlargement in the Western Balkans and has grown increasingly weary of Serbia's ambiguity. Then again, there are good reasons to argue that what we're seeing doesn't in fact represent a major U-turn. For a start, skeptics have noted that Vučić has previously sent similar signals to Brussels without definitively breaking relations with Moscow. More to the point, Belgrade continues to rely on Russian goodwill at the Security Council over Kosovo and will do so for as long as it wants to prevent Kosovo from joining the UN. Nothing in the Kyiv visit suggests that Belgrade is preparing to give up this vital support it has from Moscow. Serbia's continued refusal to impose sanctions or close its airspace, coupled with widespread pro-Russian sentiment in the country, seems to reinforce this argument. Finally, the Kremlin's muted response suggests that it may view this as Serbia's attempt to tread a fine line between the sides, rather than a full-scale tilt away from Russia. Ultimately, Vučić's visit to Kyiv is less about a fundamental shift in position and more about trying to adjust an old strategy in light of current realities. As the tide of the war changes and the EU becomes more focused on the Balkans, Serbia may now see the benefits of signalling a more constructive engagement with Ukraine. That said, as long as Kosovo remains a core national issue for Serbia, Belgrade is simply unable to push Russia to one side. In this sense, Serbia isn't in fact switching sides, as some might suggest. While it may have been far closer to Russia than any other European state, it never became an uncritical supporter of the Russian invasion. And while it may have thrown Moscow a small but useful political and diplomatic lifeline, it also provided Ukraine with much needed ammunition. For all these reasons, Serbia continues to tread a fine line, balancing the strategic objective of EU membership against the need for Russian diplomatic support on Kosovo. The question, though, is how long this balancing act can continue. I hope you found that useful. If so, here are some more videos that you might find interesting. Many thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.